Hmm. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're sounding a little more awake. Good morning. The sun is out. I love the sun and the rain. I think it's all beautiful. My wife and I had this conversation many times where we'd go out walking and I'd be like, oh, I love the rain. And she'd say, yeah, I know you love the rain. And then we'd be outside, oh, I love the sun. I know you love the sun. And then she turned to me, she said, you just like all weather, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I do. Pretty much, yeah. This month we're talking about gratitude. And this theme today is how to get unstuck. How many of you have ever been stuck in your life at some time or another, maybe? Yeah. Okay, I'm not the only one. I've been thinking about this talk, and I did a lot of research. And I saw a talk by Kathy Ann Lewis. Kathy Ann Lewis is a great mentor of mine. She's an amazing minister out of the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle. And she offered advice on this very thing, on how to get unstuck. But before we talk about how to get unstuck, let's just talk about what it's like to be unstuck, but not just unstuck, what it's like to live in heaven. What would it be like if this were literally heaven on earth? If we wanted to imagine and dream and create in our minds what heaven on earth would be like, what would it be like?
No worries.
No worries, right? Free, yeah.
Great relationships.
Yeah.
Lots of love.
Lots of love, great relationships. What else? Chocolate. Laughter, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that heaven would be a place where it would be happy, joyful, peaceful, content, and fulfilled. And that's what Kathy Ann Lewis had said. She invited us to think about a place, a time, an idea where we are happy, joyful, content, peaceful, and fulfilled. Not peaceful and discontented. Can you be those at the same time? I don't know. Think about a number in your head from 1 to 10. 1 being, I am miserable. And 10 being, I am absolutely happy, joyful, peaceful, content, and fulfilled. And just think about your number for a minute. Would anybody like to improve that number? I certainly would. Well, Kathy Ann offered 3 bits of advice. She said to do 3 simple things. Stop complaining, stop comparing, and stop criticizing. Comparing. So you think you're better than somebody else? I know we all pretend like we don't compare, but it's human nature to compare. Our minds want to create a structure, a box, a container for things. And so we want to say, I'm this and you're that. I have this and you don't. And whenever we come into places like this, we're invited to think about the idea that God or Spirit or the universe, whatever you call it, is everywhere present at all times and all spaces and all places, which means that you and I are contained inside of it. We're a part of it. Not only are we a part of it, but we are not separate from it or each other. A lot of science has started to prove this. If you start studying quantum physics, you start studying energy field, we realize that everything that we're doing is connected. Our energy fields are connected. Whenever I pray for somebody and I do a quantum experiment, we can see that my electrons or my protons affect the same thing in the body of the person that we're praying for by our intention. This is science. This is the science of the universe, which is the science of God, the science of mind, which is what we study here. We study how do we become aware of our connection to each other. Well, part of that is to stop comparing yourself to one another. Instead of comparing yourself, perhaps you could think about what is the same. What is similar? What do we have in common? And build off that. Not, oh, I'm peaceful. You can't say, well, I'm peaceful. I'm so much more peaceful than you are. You know, that's not heaven, right? The second thing is complaining. If you want to get to heaven, you can't get there by complaining. How many people have experienced heaven through complaining? Right? Nobody. And yet, it so often happens. It's so often when the rain is out, people start talking about the driving and other terrible things that are happening because of the rain, instead of, oh my God, our drought is alleviated and we have such a blessing of water, a cleansing. Everything in our existence is being fed and nurtured, cleaned up. And there's an idea that happens about complaining with the weather. And it happens in environments that are often toxic. Anybody worked in a toxic environment workplace? Yeah. Yeah. Some of you may still be working in a toxic environment workplace. Well, the opportunity in working in an area like that is to be the one that isn't participating. Every place has kind of a group energy, a group think. And it's easy to go to the tendency of the groupthink. And whenever you're in a toxic environment, it's easier to be toxic yourself than it is to be the one who is the positive person in the toxic environment. And it's your opportunity to be that person. Wherever you are, you get the opportunity to be the idea, the possibility of the expression of heaven on earth. You're the ones who get to be the one who makes the change. You get to change yourself in order to affect everybody else in a positive way. The third thing Kathy Ann Lewis talked about was criticism. We know things we know how things should be. We have righteous judgment. What do you think the opposite of criticism is? Praise. Praise. What do you think gratitude is? Praise. Praising and raising everything around you, having gratitude for everything around you, is the opposite of criticism. Emma Curtis Hopkins wrote Scientific Christian Mental Practice. And on page 110, she says, if there is a work to do, we may be certain we are the very ones to do it. If there is something bothering you about a situation or a place, then it's yours to do. If there is something missing in the spiritual community that you wish you could see, it's your opportunity to step up and create it. If you notice that there's something wrong, instead of complaining about it, it's your opportunity to take action and fix it. If you don't want to take action, then don't complain about it. Because really, where's complaining getting you? Nowhere. If you want to have heaven, if you want to experience heaven, then that's your opportunity to make a different choice. Mo Manley was on the U.S. Olympic bicycling team. She was a very good bicyclist, obviously. And one day she was on a bike ride and she went blind. She had a terrible accident and found out that she had multiple sclerosis. And that had caused her to go blind in the middle of a bike ride. After this terrible accident, she walked into Center for Spiritual Living in Seattle. She started learning about how she can change her ideas about life. She started learning that she could have a different perspective on life and come at things in a positive way. When she walked into that center, she could barely see. She had a cane and she could barely walk. She decided to go to the MS Society in Washington. And they have these support groups there. And she noticed that at the support groups, what they did is they would talk about a condition, and then they would talk about the next iteration. So everybody would say, oh, this thing happened to me, and then they would talk about the next thing that happens after that thing that happens to you. And then this is their form of therapy. And she realized nobody was getting better. She decided to take the principles that she was learning at Center for Spiritual Living and take them to this society. She gave them a proposal that said, why don't we try and teach things a little bit differently? Instead of our support group focusing on all the things and areas of our bodies that don't work, what if we focused on all the areas that do work? And that's exactly what they did. They started saying, oh, I'm so grateful that I could lift my head this morning. Or, oh, I'm so grateful that I am able to walk still. And they started talking about all of the areas in their life that they could do something, that they could be independent and free. And an amazing thing started happening to her when she started doing this. Her sight returned, and she started being able to walk again. As a matter of fact, she is now competing on bike rides again, but she's doing rides to raise money for multiple sclerosis instead of on the Olympic team. And she said, now, this doesn't mean that every day is a good day for her, but it does mean that she focuses on the things that are good for her. And because of that, she's able to move on and live a happy life. Now, we all have these choices in our life. We all have toxic experiences, people that are not there to praise and raise, and maybe we're the ones being that person. And yet something inside of us is seeking something different. Something is yearning for a connection to the divine. Something is yearning for a greater, fuller, more expressive experience of life. And yet here we are doing the exact things that is causing the opposite of what we want to have. Every moment, every day, we are at choice point to take action in a way that is for the positive and for the better. I'm reading this book, our book of the month, but I'm calling it the book of 2 months. This Life is Joy, which we do have for sale today, if you want to buy one. This is by Roger Teal, and it's so good I wanted to keep it for next month as well. And I was reading this book, and I thought there are 2 beautiful things that he talked about in the book on ways we can create heaven on earth. Not only can we stop comparing, complaining, and criticizing, but we can do 2 things. You have 2 options for getting unstuck in your life. You can surrender. People don't like that word because they think it means like the little white flag, and that means you win, we're having a war, you win, I lose. That's what surrender means. I want to have you think about a different idea for surrender. Surrender your ideas of what's supposed to be happening or should be happening. And instead accept in the moment of what is happening. Accept and welcome every moment exactly as it is. In the book, Roger has a story about 2 men. They go on a walk, and it's kind of dusk, and they're walking towards this village, and they realize it becomes really dark, and they can't see their way, and they're getting distracted while they're walking, and they're walking next to a riverbank, and both of them slip and fall into the river. And one guy, he is really freaking out. And he starts swimming upstream, and he starts going for the shore, and he's working and working and swimming, and he just can't seem to get anywhere. And finally he becomes too exhausted that he just gets taken over by the river and he drowns. The other guy doesn't fight the river. And he just floats along with it. And he just figures, I'll just take it as long as I can take it. And he kind of guides himself to make sure he doesn't hit any rocks. And eventually, he gets put off on a sandbar. And whenever he gets up, he walks over and he realizes that he was deposited at the village that they were walking to, right in front of it. But isn't this how we are in our life? Something is going on and we are fighting and resisting and angry and upset about it. Instead of going with the flow. Instead of recognizing that maybe that very thing is the thing to deposit us on the place that we were going. Dr. Roger has a couple of ideas for purposeful surrendering. Think of this. Instead of giving up, it's flowing with and opening into. Instead of trying to create by resistance and forcing, you're tuning to wisdom and possibilities. It is allowing higher energies to flow through us and use us. It is not compromising what's going on in your life, but synthesizing. The second option you have for getting unstuck is by taking creative action. Interestingly enough, surrendering and taking creative action go hand in hand. Surrendering is not resisting. It's allowing the flow to take place. And then taking creative action is exactly what Emma Curtis Hopkins was saying. If we feel there's a work to do, we may be certain we are the very ones to do it. Do you think Dr. Martin Luther King wasted his time complaining? No. He took solid action. He didn't resist what was going on, but he took action on what was going on. It is not violent, competitive, or resistant action. It's creative action. Action that's in the highest and best intent for all involved. That's the kind of action that I charge you to do in your life. There's something that's happened around our country. I don't know if you've listened to the news, but the Ferguson case has caused a lot of upset in this country. And there's a reason that it's caused a lot of upset. It brought to light conditions that are inherent in our system right now. That there is some racism, that there is prejudice. That although we want to be a country with certain ideas, we haven't exactly stepped into those ideas yet. There's a letter that our spiritual leader, Dr. Ken Gordon, sent about this, and I'd like to read it to you. He said, as spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living, I find it imperative to speak out in the wake of the grand jury decision and the subsequent civil disturbances in Ferguson, Missouri, and elsewhere. These incidents serve to highlight the deeper issues of racism and poverty that are systemic in the United States. We hold that spiritual maturity and wisdom gleaned from the great teachings of all the ages is profoundly echoed in our Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Since the time of its creation, when the statement did not include American or African Americans or women. And yet we've traveled down a long road towards equality in many ways. Yet there is a lingering reality that in our police and prison systems, in our halls of justice, and on our community streets, this equality is not fully realized or embraced. Centers for Spiritual Living is guided by the ideas in our global heart vision. We envision here a world where each and every person discovers his or her own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. We envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area. We envision a world of peace and harmony, enfranchisement, and justice. We invite everyone to stand for a deeper conversation and true reconciliation between our vision of liberty and justice for all and practices in the world today that violate that very vision. Let us know together that peace prevails as we enter this marvelous season of light. Let's also know that darkness is dispelled by the awareness of justice, peace, and love. Ken Gordon, spiritual leader, Centers for Spiritual Living. And I think that this is an exact opportunity for all of us to step into our own lives, to find the areas where we are being violent with ourselves, with each other, where we're not being equal or fair or just. And sometimes I can permeate in our own experience of ourselves. And sometimes it can permeate in the office, in a center like this, or out with your family. And I invite each and every one of you to take on a new idea today. To take on the idea that maybe you can live in heaven on earth. That this very moment you can be unstuck. And you can do this easily by stop comparing, complaining, and criticizing. And you can start praising, surrendering, and taking action. I want to leave with a quote by my favorite author unknown. Somewhere, someone else is happy with less than you have. Think about that.
That's great.
Yeah. So take it on this week, this month, this life, and do something different. Because I know that we can create a world that works for everyone. Let's pray. I am so grateful for this opportunity to be amongst wise spiritual teachers. To know that everybody that I meet and I come in contact with is the divine in action. I know that God is everywhere present, that God, the universe, that spirit, love, permeates every aspect that I experience as reality. And I know and claim that it continues to reflect to me what I am evolving into. And so I know and claim that I choose a new idea for my life, for this world. I choose a world that is free, that is loving. I choose a world that is filled with praising and raising. I know and claim that this is true for me, that I continue to evolve and grow, that I'm guided to the right and perfect people, places, and things to assist me in shining my light and sharing my magnificence with all around, and knowing that this gives other people the permission to do the same. I know and claim that I am in tune with the highest vibration on the planet, and that I am fulfilled by serving this world with love. And so I know from this moment on, my choices are guided by love, that I am intuitively guided to the right and perfect actions for the highest benefit of all. As I know this for myself, I know this for each and every person here and each and every person listening online. I know and claim that there is a greater expression that is happening on the planet, and that I am a part of it. And I choose to step into that leadership, to step into that light, and to allow the infinite to flow through me. I surrender to that greater idea. I let go of my ego. I let go of anything that has held me back before, and I just relax into it, into the flow, and I let it be. I'm so grateful to know that this is the truth, that God is showing up right now, showing me the way, showing me how. Because I don't need to know how, I just need to listen to that intuitive guidance, to know that it is being revealed to me easily, effortlessly, and abundantly. I'm grateful to know that this is already done for myself, for each and every person here. I'm so grateful to be a part of this life. I'm grateful and humbled and in awe. I let this prayer go, letting it be in its perfection, knowing that God is already taking action on these words, knowing that it is already done. It is good and very good, and so it is.